to give me anesthesia. Let me sing, and after a while, you'll know that I'm completely oblivious to what you do. You can do anything you want to me. And that's what happened. Huh? The Mozitzer. Mozitzer Rebbe. He composed a song of 36 variations. A huge, long song, based on a certain piece of the in Kippur davening.
So when did he live?
Huh?
So when did he live?
When he lived, no, this was like the 3rd generation, wasn't that long ago, before the war.
Mozitzer's place?
Huh?
His place?
In America? What?
No.
Mozitzer is a place, yeah. All of this is places, yeah. All right, so let us we'll base ourselves on the Pasha of the week, on the Sichos of the Rebbe and the Pasha of the week. And as we always say, that the main focus of our talks is to find ourselves in this discussion. The Rebbe points out an interesting thing right in the beginning of this Pasha. The Pasha begins, C Chayey Sorah, the life of Sorah, referring to the age of Sorah, the years of Sorah. There were 100 years, and 20 years, and 7 years. And Rashi comments on the fact that the Torah separates and identifies each one of these denominations separately. 100 years, not 127 years. 100 years, 20 years, 7 years. It's almost like saying she lived 100 years, she lived 7 years, she lived 20 years, she lived 7 years. So Rashi says that this is to imply and to give us the sense, the note, that although there are great differences, a person when he's 100 years, versus a person when he's 20, versus a person when he's 7. There are great differences in many levels, in terms of health and well-being, in terms of appearance. A 7-year-old child is fresh. A 100-year-old person is not so fresh. It doesn't have such an attractive, so to speak, a lively appearance. On the other hand, at 100, one is much wiser, has gone through a life of experience, of tests and so forth. At 7, doesn't even know what life is all about. At 20, again, his first beginning life. So Rashi says that the Torah denotes these denominations to point out that Sorahs, each one of these major denominations were all perfect. At 100, she was sinless as of 20, because at 20 years, it says in Bezen Shalmaila, in above, in the heavenly court, does not count anything that a person does before 20. Punishable only after 20. Just like we have 13, Bezen Shalmaila, 20 is the maturity age. So therefore, when she was 100, she was completely blameless, pure, just as when she was 20. And when she was 20, she was just like 7 in terms of her freshness and purity. Beauty. And then the end of the posuk is C Chayey Sorah. These are all the years of the life of Sorah. So after having commented on the different denominations that the Torah mentions, the Torah summarizes that these are the years of Sorah. And Rashi says, what is implied with this? These are the years of Sorah. to say that Kulam Shavilatov, all of her years, all of them were equal in terms of their goodness. So the Rebbe is pointing out there seems to be some kind of inherent paradox, inherent contradiction here. On one hand, you say that 100 has to be compared to 20. 20 is compared to 7. But the perfect stage is 7. 20 is like 7. 100 is like 20. And then you say they were all equal. So might as well say one in one swoop, 127. Why you divide them into 3 denominations? So there are many sikhs based on this posuk in the Rambam. But I'm just focusing on one nakuda, on one point, and then discuss this. One point I want to focus in is that Sorah, as you've learned already in previous Pasha, Sorah had not an easy life. The traveling, the being taken away into Parah's house, being taken away to Elimelech's, to Avimelech's house, lived childless till she was 90, which is a very painful phenomenon. And by the time she reached that point, she already gave up. As you learned that she had already lost, so to speak, the women's natural capability of giving birth, of childbirth, and then it all returned. Then there was a story with Hagar. She did not have an easy life. Can you imagine? She entered Mitzrayim in a box. That was not a great pleasure. Throughout her life, she was constantly facing all kinds of difficulties. But she stood up to all that. Each one of these difficulties, just like Avraham, we know Avraham went through 10 issues, 10 different episodes, different challenges that were described as nisyonis, straightforward tests. And the most classical one of them is Akedah. The Akedah, the end of the last Pasha of this last week. But even right in the beginning, what we know about, even before we know he was thrown into a flame, but even that which is clearly written is also a heavy test, a heavy difficulty. Hashem tells him he should leave his home, leave his environment that he's accustomed to, an environment that he was successful in, an environment that he has developed a whole following, he has worked very hard to develop, and all of a sudden leave it. And where are you going? I'll tell you already where you're going. Can you imagine a man with a flock, with the whole following? I'll tell you where you're going. Just go. Really, these are all, so to speak, challenges. And slowly, as we discussed the other time, Avraham has reached the epitome to the ultimate test of the Akedah. And Bris Milah and the Akedah. The same thing, in different ways, in her own way, Sorah likewise lived through a lifetime of many challenges. When a person is challenged, a challenge by definition means that you are challenged to do something which is difficult for you. And you have to summon, so to speak, summon. Summon means call forth, bring out. All your deepest koiches, deepest capabilities to overcome the fear, overcome the concern, and also all the wisdom that you can possibly muster to deal with all the difficulties. At the end of the journey, so to speak, then you see, oh, this is what this was all about. This is what this accomplished. But as you were going into it, it wasn't so obvious. As a matter of fact, it was quite difficult. So the Torah is telling us that although Sorah had gone through many different stages, there were ups and downs. Throughout this entire journey, with all these ups and downs, there is one strand, one single strand, that you can say that Kulam Shalom, they were all equal in terms of being good. How are they all equal in terms of being good, even though they're not equal in many other ways? We'll discuss this, and from that we will draw something which is very, very significant for us. There's an interesting saying by the Baal Shem Tov. We say in the Erev Shabbos, in the Kapitel Kuf Zayin, that we say Erev Shabbos by Mincha. I don't know if you all say it. Erev Shabbos by Mincha, we say a Kapitel of Tilim from Kapitel Tilim Kuf Zayin. And that Kapitel discusses the 4 different circumstances that a person goes through that afterwards he's required to give separate thanks to Hashem. If he was imprisoned or he got sick and he came out, he went down in the sea, or he was I don't remember what did I say? He was sick.
Desert.
He lost in the desert, right? So then when they come out, Yod Hashem Chazal, you have to thank Hashem. This is the Korban Toiva. So there's a posuk over there that says, Re'evim gantzmeim, nafshom hem tisatov. These sojourners, someone sojourns and travels into the desert. And you travel into the desert, and even if you know your way, it's quite challenging, because the dryness of the desert is such that requires a lot of support, a lot of sustenance. And if you get lost, God forbid, then it's really very, very, very scary. So he says, "Even gantzmeim." So the Apostle says they are hungry and they are thirsty. Nafsham empty sativ, and their soul within them is fainting. It's faint. And then Hashem shows them the way out. That's what the Apostle speaks about. So Baal Shem Tov gives this pasuk, Reivim Gantzim Nafsham empty sativ, gives it a Hasidische insight. Very deep insight. And he says it's like this. A person is hungry, a person is thirsty. It would appear, from our perspective, as we see it, a person is hungry and thirsty does not represent any kind of life force, any kind of godly element. It simply means that he is hungry physically and he is thirsty, and all you have to do is give him food and give him water, and then he's going back to his normal self. There is no spiritual element in this. There's no positive element. It's all negative. He is hungry because he doesn't have enough food in him. He is thirsty. And you have to supply it. It's all from a negative perspective. So Baal Shem Tov said, that is not really the case. The real truth, he says, that when they're hungry and they're thirsty, why? What is the force behind hunger and thirst? Nafsham Emtesatav. It is actually the thirst of their soul. Which means, as Hashem explains it, every soul has its mission in this world. And the mission generally consists in purifying a certain part of the world, or that part of the world that is its allotment, so to speak, what it has to accomplish. And some of that allotment, some of that accomplishment is by partaking of things in the world and using them in a proper way for mitzvah, and that way they elevate the sparks, the godly sparks that are in this item. When a person eats and he makes a bracha, the Alter Rebbe explains in Tanya, and he eats and makes a bracha and eats on Shem Shomayim, and then afterwards he uses that strength to do mitzvah, he has actually redeemed, so to speak, the godly spark that was in this piece of food. So Baal Shem Tov said, the soul is thirsty, the soul is hungry. Why? Because the soul once is longing for the opportunity to fulfill its mission, to eat that food and to drink that drink, in order to draw from it the highest, the godly spark, the godly spirit, in order to elevate it, in order to fulfill essentially its mission in life. So Baal Shem Tov explains in other words, in short, that this negative experience that a person has, that he is hungry and thirsty, is not negative at all. It is actually representing a very positive force coming from his soul. And it says, go eat so that you would fulfill your mission by transforming this food into Kedusha. And go drink in the same thing. Which means, coming back to Sorah, and then we'll talk to ourselves, which means that the following, it's a very important principle. When a person is confronted with a difficulty, even if it were a physical, a worldly difficulty, and one would think that this has nothing to do with his avodas Hashem, nothing to do with his godly soul. It is simply because he wants to succeed in the world. And since he's lacking that success, he feels the lack of it, and he is troubled by the lack of it. So Baal Shem Tov tells us that is a missing understanding completely what's going on. The desire to succeed and that which makes him feel lacking, deep down, is really an inspiration coming from his soul. Except that at that time, because we are in the physical world, and everything godly is concealed, it appears to us that it's all physical. All physical. They don't see how there is really, so to speak, a godly element, a life element. It's just be looking for worldly success. But it is a fundamental error. In our day, in our time, this is something which has become so clear, because those people, but we have, the pain of the youth, the lost youth, the pain of the youth in the 60s and the 70s, what happened there, they did not merely lose interest in spirituality or in anything else. They lost interest in life. Everything. Which means that even the interest in success, in world success, is actually rooted from a sense of life, a sense of value of life. By Yidden, this is rooted in the sense of spiritual life, of godliness. So, I said I was explaining briefly the way it is implied by Sorah, that even though Sorah was challenged all the time, and it was difficult, it was painful, but the pain was actually representative, not worldly pain, representative of the desire of the soul to accomplish its mission, fulfill its mission, and to bring out the godliness in the world. This was the pain. It wasn't the lack of comfort and tranquility and so forth. Coming back to us, which is a phenomenal lesson for each one of us. A person, take it and start from a very simple experience, all the way down to the simple lowest element. I don't have anything going for me. I don't have money. I don't have knowledge. I don't have scholarship. I'm working hard, but it's not going. Where is it all going to go? So it seemed almost, not almost superficially, as we would interpret it, that this is really, so to speak, feeling badly for oneself from a worldly perspective. In the world, you have to be successful. You have to be a somebody. You have to either be a scholar or be a singer or be a dancer or be a writer or be a something. I'm neither one of those. And if I should try and get there, I don't see my way getting. So I sit down and I start laboring on the piece of Gemara and a piece of Rashi and a piece of Mishnayos, and every time that I come to a stop and I can't make sense of the piece of Gemara, I get disappointed, I get discouraged. What is going to be? So this is a perfectly rational type of reaction, and this reaction tends to point on us that what we are really concerned is about worldly success. This is my concern. How am I going to make out in the world? If the Rebbeishter is Matzliach, Hashem gives us sends His bracha, which Rebbeishter sends His bracha to everyone. And after the allotted period of time that he has, and he's put all his effort, and he has accomplished something, he's gotten to know a little Torah, got to know a little halacha, he got to know how to live like a Jew, and he's able to go and establish a life and so forth. Then he says, oh, it wasn't really worldly success I was looking for. I'm satisfied. I have a normal life, and I have a family, and I have a home, and I have Yiddishkeit. I'm pretty happy. So what happens there is that he begins to think, 10 years ago I thought that my whole desire was for worldly success, and I find out that just to live like a Jew is good enough. What he doesn't understand is that at the time when he was struggling, this whole perspective, this whole view that he was concerned about his worldly success was a mistake. This was not what he was concerned about. The force behind this impetus that was pushing him that he should learn and that he should absorb as much Yiddishkeit as he can was not in order to make somebody out of himself. It was in order to get a feel for Yiddishkeit. It was a neshama drawing. At that time, he thought that he was involved in worldliness. So it wasn't, it's not so complimentary. Complimentary is, it's not such a nice thing, right? He's concerned about worldliness rather than godliness. The truth is that the real inspiration behind all that effort was not worldly at all. Like the Baal Shem Tov says, "Re'evim gantzmeim." A person is hungry and thirsty. You think he's hungry and thirsty? He wants to eat because he wants to fill his belly. Take away the physical pain. No, that's not the reason. The real force behind it is nafsho mem tisata, it's the soul that's thirsty. Because the soul wants to draw the godly spirit that's and the spark that's in this piece of food. Thus, the meaning of these words, what the Pasuk says, she was 100 years, she was 20 years, she was 7 years, and then as kulam shomatev, they're all equal for good. How are they all equal for good? At the end of her life, it was clear, it was obvious, it was all surfaced that what was Sorah's life about? It was all kedusha, all holiness, to bring Yitzchak into the world and to establish the Jewish nation and so forth. This became completely evident at the end of her life. During her lifetime, you would think, she was paying for various other things. Not so. Kulam shonatev, all the suffering and all the difficulty, all the things that she was concerned about, was really rooted in the very same spark, in the very same point. She was always letoiva, always focused on the good, but it wasn't never necessarily obvious. And all these various challenges, all the various tests that she went through, on the superficial level appeared to be, Para is taking her and she is suffering, Abimelech is taking her and she is suffering. All of that had one central focus. The central focus is the Avodas Hashem and to ultimately accomplish her task in life. Despite all these ups and downs. This is a phenomenal point to understand. That all of us here have heavy challenges. As I always mentioned, I really appreciate, when you have adult people that both by their secular education and by their age Under normal circumstances, it would have been lomdim. In a completely different state, different level. And here they sit down and start deciphering the Aleph Beis, and then Kometz Alepho, and then the Chumash, and then the Rashi, and then the Mishnayos, and translating every word, and it's really tedious for an adult to do. And sometimes become very disappointing. And he says to himself, what's going on with me? Where am I going? Where is this going to lead? This is a very challenging period. But the spirit behind it, that pushes one to do it, and the spirit behind the disappointment, the spirit behind the feeling behind, feeling not where I should be, is all coming from a spiritual perspective. It's not the seeking, it's not the concern about where do I stand on the totem pole. You know what a totem pole is? Where do I stand in terms of social standing? Pyramid, right? It's one singular concern. But every Yid wants to ultimately be able to fulfill his mission in life. And this is what gives us the impetus, the strength to focus in and do the tedious work of doing the Aleph Beis and doing the Kometz Aleph and doing the Pashto and doing whatever else we're doing. Coming down to the actual effort, the actual work that we're doing, this also will give us an understanding of this kulam shovim l'teva, that they're all equal in terms of being good. I don't exactly know the years when this occurred, but at some point in time, the Friedrich, the previous Rebbe, wrote very extensively about a certain phenomenon that was taking root in the Jewish circles. And that was that some people have developed a new way of teaching children to read. Something akin, something similar to the secular method, where the way we teach children to read, that's the way you're reading it. We have the names of the alphabet, the names of the Aleph Beis. Then we say Kometz Alepho, Kometz Beis Bo, Kometz Gimel Go, and then we start reading, and putting words together, and putting syllables together, and words together, and so forth. And these people said, hey, this is too tedious, takes a long time. We have a much easier and much faster way. And they were right. It's easier and faster. That's to read the sound of the words rather than the name of the letters. And they proved it right, that if you just, instead of saying a base, you say a b and a g and a d, it goes much faster. And they developed this method, and they started making inroads in the Jewish schools.
What?
Inroads. They started actually taking over and teaching it. It was very successful. And the Friedrich Rebbe was very, very upset about this. And he wrote very, very serious, very strong objections. And he said, the letters of our alphabet are not symbols of sounds. They're not symbols like the ABC. These are holy letters. When a child says an aleph, he is learning Torah. When a child says Kometz aleph, he is learning Torah. They said Kometz aleph, not Kometz aleph, aleph with a Kometz, right? Or that Kometz aleph is the Kometz aleph of the word Onoichi Hashem Elokecha, the first word of the Aseres HaDibros, of the Ten Commandments. So when he says Kometz aleph, he's already learned the Ten Commandments, but at that fundamental level. You follow me? Mm-hmm. There is nothing that is only, so to speak, a means to an end. A means to an end, a way to get someplace, but it's not in itself Torah. Nothing in our effort here in Torah that is just a stepping stone for something else. Everything has its own inherent value, its own inherent truth. One learns the Aleph base, he is learning Torah at that fundamental level. He learns Kometz aleph, he is learning Torah at that fundamental level. When he starts translating the words, reading the words, it's all the same thing. He is learning Torah. Torah does not begin when you start learning the deeper concepts. Every step of the way, you're learning Torah. And every step of the way, the soul thirsts for that. And it's important to understand that if Chas v'Sholom, somebody skips this fundamental level and goes straight to the concepts, like people say, let's not be involved. What do I need the Hebrew for? What do I need the words for? What do I need the original for? Just give me the concept. Give me the richness of it. Give me the insight. The insight is a very important thing. It's a concept that may enrich your thinking, but this is not what it means to learn Torah. To learn Torah means that you are literally doing the mitzvah of Talmud Torah, and thereby you are connecting to Hashem and you're fulfilling this mitzvah. Just as you know that we have to make a bracha bichas HaTorah every day in the morning, and every day in the morning we have to bichas HaTorah. You're not allowed to learn Torah before you make a bichas HaTorah. You're not allowed to learn Aseres HaDibros. You're not allowed to learn Chumash and Gemara and Mishnayos without making a bracha. Neither are you allowed to learn Kometz aleph or without making a bracha. It's exactly the same thing. And it's important to understand. I want to explain the following very important principle also. You know, there's a very well-known phenomenon. A person who, let's say, two wealthy people, two people who are wealthy, equally wealthy. One worked for his wealth. He developed a business, and he really worked for it. And the other won a lottery, or he inherited it. Let's say he won a lottery. Nobody dies, so he won a lottery. Baruch Hashem. There's no more such things, right? He won a lottery. So they're both equally wealthy. The one who worked for his wealth, who developed the business, he truly appreciates, he truly understands what that is. And you know something? He knows what to do with it. He knows what to do the right things with it. the one who won the lottery, he is totally oblivious, unaware. He doesn't know what it is. Doesn't know to appreciate it. It means nothing to him. As a matter of fact, it's an interesting thing that I'm talking about. I recently read a little analysis of all the various people who won very big lottery tickets. I didn't read all of them, but one episode I read. This man won more than $250 million, like $300 million. Okay, it's an exaggerated sum. Mamish didn't know what to do with it. He had no appreciation of it. He was buying all kinds of different cars. It was going wild. Bottom line, it didn't take long. He was a pauper.
He was what?
He was impoverished. He had nothing. And his wife was saying, I wished I had torn up that ticket. It destroyed his life. The process of getting there is part of the richness of being there. The labor of love, the labor of the attempt, of the repeating and reviewing and struggling, this is what enriches, this is what gives us a sense of what we have actually accomplished, of the value of it. I mentioned to you, I don't know if once a year I mention this story, but this is, I think I have a different new crowd here. There was a story of the young boy, you probably remember, right? A young boy in Israel. This is going back many years. This was in the late 40s, maybe 50s, 1950s. There was a boy in Israel. I spoke to someone who said that he actually saw this boy and he spoke to him. This boy knew the whole Torah at birth. Literally knew the whole Torah at birth. He was a boy like all other boys, were playing with sandboxes. When he came to Cheder to learn, the Rebbe started saying Breishis, and he said Breishis V'Elokim Zeh Shemayim. He knew it by heart. Whatever you started, he knew it. This man that I know told me that he was standing next to this boy and he started quoting Mishnahs and the boy was rattling off the Mishnahs. And the secret in this is, it says that before a Neshama is born, right before it's taught the entire Torah. And then at birth, he forgets it. And this boy happened to have bypassed that gateway, and he snuck out, and he did not forget it. So you would think, hey, it's a blessing, right? It's wonderful. It was not a blessing at all. I don't want to say the word curse, but it was definitely not a blessing. It really precluded, it didn't let him learn anything. The story goes,
It's like lottery.
Like lottery. The story goes that they took this boy to the Belzer Rebbe. I don't know exactly the result of it, but the Belzer Rebbe gave him a bracha that he should forget the Torah.
What age?
Huh?
What age?
What age?
What age?
An age in Cheder age. I don't know exactly. Cheder age, you should be able to start learning.
Is he still living?
Huh?
Still living now?
I don't know.
Because I knew there was a story like that. A woman, the same.
Yeah?
She passed away really young.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. Beyond that stage, and they say that the Belzer Rebbe, they came to Belzer Rebbe gave him a bracha they should forget. So we say, a bracha to forget Torah. It's a big, big bracha. So then he'll be, when the person knows things, please understand, a person knows things and he does not get through the process of knowing it, it's a curse. Because he knows and doesn't know what he knows. It's insignificant. Just like wealth, we can hardly imagine wealth. Oh, it's a wonderful thing. If you don't know to what it means, how it's accumulated, how you work for it, you don't know what it is. You only know that you have no limits and you have no value. Nothing has a value. The houses don't have value. The cars don't have value. The clothes don't have value. Nothing has value. Nothing has value. To appreciate anything in this world, it has to come through the process of acquisitions, it's called. Acquisitions. Process of getting there. To know how to learn, to know Torah, there's a process for it. If you want to know Torah and appreciate it, and it should have some meaning to you, and it should actually have an effect on your personality, that it should give you guidance and strength in your life, you have to go through the struggle of getting to know it. And I'll tell you another interesting phenomenon. This is also recorded in Frierdiker Rebbe's Siches. And some of it I personally witnessed. I remember in yeshiva, learning amongst many Bochrim, generally speaking, Bochrim, our Bochrim, they're smart. They're Jewish boys from Hamish homes, they're smart. They learn well. They catch well. They catch on quickly and they remember. So they learn well. They're smart. Some are smarter, some are less smart. The ones that ultimately grew out to be lomdim, that really stood on their feet, were not those who were very smart, were those who labored. There were those who would sit in the cheder, in shir, in a class, and the Rebbe would say it once and they know it. And the rest of the time they would go and play. There were those who did not get it the first time, and they need repetition, and they asked there more questions, and they labored, and they stayed up deep into the night to review it. Those became the real scholars. Also, there were those who did both. They had a good head, and they caught on quickly, and then they also stood up the whole night, and they learned other things. They also were very successful. It's not to take it away. On the contrary, that's a blessing. But without labor, it does not happen. That's for sure. Without labor, it doesn't happen. This is the meaning of the posik. There were 100 years, there were 20 years, there were 7 years. All of these years define a different period and different struggle periods. But the struggle, that is what enriches our life. This is what gives us a sense of reality of what we really accomplish. And then you turn around and say, wow, everything was good. Everything was good. The struggle was good. The struggle was just as good and just as rich and just as beautiful as the reward that came from it. This is the message for today. This is the message for today, for tomorrow, for a year from now. This is the message for life, for Jewish life in this world. We do not reject, we do not complain, we do not refrain from struggle. Working hard is the means not only of getting, but of getting the real thing, getting the riches out. Not just to have something in your pocket, but to be enriched by it. You learn a piece of Gemara, a piece of Mishnayos, whatever you learn, a piece of Chumash, you learn how to read. It becomes yours. This is what gives you, this is what makes your heart race from excitement. It opens up your mind and think, oh, something real has happened. That's what Torah is. Torah is the food for the neshama. And food feeds, everyone understand the words? Food feeds only if you chew it up and digest it. And you know something? You know one of the signs of a kosher animal? What are the two signs for a kosher animal?
Chews its cud and has swivels.
Chews its cud and has swivels. Chew it over again, chew it over again, chew it over again. That's a sign of a kosher animal. Why? Because that means that you really appreciate what you're learning. If you say, oh, I already know it, I want to go something new, you do not appreciate the richness of what you learned. A kosher animal, a kosher Jew, is one who does not want to prove that he knows. He wants to experience that knowledge. He wants it to become part of his life. In order to do that, you have to chew the cud. You have to review it, to chew it over and over and over again. Then it gives you real life. That's to prove that I know it, without really appreciating it. That's not a sign of kashrus. So, we have here, we don't have 7-year-olds, but we have 20-year-olds, we have 30-year-olds, 40 years olds. Kulam shavim l'toiva. Everyone has an opportunity to be good and to absorb what is good. God should bless you and you should be successful. We should all be successful and we should all be zeichet to the Geulah Shleima.